What is up, everybody? Lines on Paper here with a spoiler-free review of Zack Snyder's Justice League cut. That's right, I was up till midnight and stayed up till 4 in the morning watching this movie so I could discuss it with you and let you know if it's worth the 4 hours and 2-minute runtime out of your day. Before we get into that, my comic book, Malevolent Rising, is currently funding on Indiegogo. Please consider giving that a look and maybe even becoming a backer. Now on with review. So Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League, the legend, the albatross that has been out there in the winds for years, and now we finally get to see it. But was it worth all the wait? Yeah, it really was. This was an epic movie. It does boast a runtime of 4 hours and 2 minutes. And I'm not going to lie, there's a part in the movie, and I'm not going to talk about which, but if you watch, you'll see there is a little part where it lulls, but it's still an important part to the story. And the movie obviously picks up and gets going again and rushes to the finish. I can tell that Zack Snyder really spent time and wanted to convey what ideas he was putting into the movie, what his series would have looked like going forward if he was given the chance. And I don't know, maybe if potentially still given the chance if a sequel does end up coming out of this. I read that it pretty much broke the internet last night, people streaming it. So maybe it'll get the views it needs to convince Warner Brothers that this series still has some legs in it. Now, is this very different from the original movie other than the runtime? I mean, obviously, it's twice as long, so we've got 2 hours of footage that wasn't there, so that automatically makes it different. But there are a lot of the same story beats are still there, mostly in the first half, though. The first half, at least a lot of kind of what happened stays the same, but as the movie goes on, it feels more and more different. So be prepared for that. So if you're going through and you're watching and you're 45 minutes in and you're thinking this seems a lot like what you saw before, no, that's just, I think that was the bulk of what Zack Snyder had completed before he ended up leaving the project and Joss Whedon took over. And even the stuff that's there, you could tell was extensively retouched and reshot. Steppenwolf looks completely different. The fight scenes are a lot more brutal in this than they were in Joss Whedon's version. So you can tell every scene in this, it seems like, had been altered one way or another. The few scenes that remained in the original movie. The question I got to ask myself first is, what Warner Brothers was thinking, not just sticking with this original vision. I mean, I feel it was a far superior movie than the Joss Whedon version of the Justice League, and it definitely paints a narrative going forward that you had a lot of room to grow more movies and more stories out of. Zack Snyder is really telling one complete narrative that involves the Justice League characters, and there's side stories to be explored there that could be movies on their own, but he definitely has one story that and as you watch it and reflect back on the Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, you see the threads of that story being placed in there, even a small bit in Suicide Squad. You know, all those movies that were in the Zack Snyderverse era of DC were really coherent, even more coherent than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whereas the Marvel movies tend to stand on their own with Easter eggs and then ultimately a lead into whatever comes next, whereas Man of Steel leads directly into Batman vs. Superman. Batman vs. Superman literally leads directly into Justice League. So these movies feel more like chapters in a book. And that's one of the things I appreciate, because I don't want the DC movies to feel like the Marvel movies. I want them to be something different. I don't want to see a Marvel movie starring a DC character. These movies have a different feel to them. These characters have different attitudes, different personalities. They're not snarky or funny. They're grounded and real, and in some ways most of them are broken in one way or another and need a character journey to kind of find those missing pieces of themselves. This movie really felt like a DC crossover event. It felt to me like Crisis on Infinite Earth, the comic. They really did a good job of making me feel like I'm in the DC universe when I was watching this. It has a lot of mythology, which DC Universe is very big on their mythos, their lore, and they bring that into this movie, which I thought was very good. Steppenwolf is still your main villain, but his motives are a lot better explored. And obviously they've shown in the trailers that Darkseid appears in this movie. So you get to know who he's working for, where he's coming from, and what the stakes are, what we're actually fighting for, other than in the original, you knew he was going to combine 3 mother boxes and create a CGI apocalypse. And I'm not saying that his plan is totally altered, but you understand it more and you figure out what he's going to do and what the stakes are, exactly what it is that Steppenwolf represents and what it is that he, is striving towards and who he works for. So the stakes are a lot better, the stakes are a lot more explained, which makes what the Justice League are fighting for seem a lot more real, and you get a lot more invested in whether or not they can succeed. The characters are a lot more fleshed out. Everybody has a chance to shine in this movie. Well, I mean, obviously it's a 4-hour movie. Everybody's going to be able to be given ample screen time, but I appreciated that. So had this gone to theaters, they probably would have cut this runtime, at least at best, probably cut it to 3 hours or slightly over. So we would have lost some of that. And there's room to cut. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, there is a part of the movie that does slow a little bit, but there's a lot of story in there. And again, you can tell that the director, he had a vision and he wants the audience to know what that vision was in case this is his last word on these characters, which I can appreciate. The last question I have is, should DC follow with this, make this movie canon and build from it? And I would say absolutely yes. Again, it was a good movie, but at the same time, being a comic book movie that doesn't feel like the comic book movies that are out there, it feels like this is DC, and DC and Marvel can be separate, and I appreciate that. Just like the comic books, the DC and Marvel comics don't have the same feel. They tend to have different house art styles, and they tend to have different paced storylines, just as this movie has a different paced storyline than from a Marvel movie. I appreciate that. So this movie is definitely a recommend for me. I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. There are a few gripes. If I had to nail one critique, I would say where maybe the other movie has a hold over, or has a foothold over the Snyder cut, I'd just say it's the score. I appreciated the score in the Joss Whedon movie better. They got Danny Elfman. He came in. He had done DC movies before. I feel like he had an understanding of the character. He even brought some elements of those old themes of the Batman theme and the Superman theme, and I liked that. Especially when you're dealing with characters that are so iconic as the Justice League, I feel like that score should match that, and I think it did. That was one way that the Joss Whedon movie was more successful. But other than that, I think this movie tops it on every level. And I was very happy with what I saw. And it was definitely, I felt worth the wait. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Let me know in the comments below if you watch it, what you think, if you liked it better, if you thought it was worse, if you'd like to see DC or Warner Brothers continue with this storyline to see where Zack Snyder would have taken it, give him another shot at a sequel. Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit like. Please subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And again, check out my comic book, Malevolent Rising, issue number 4, currently funding on Indiegogo. And I will talk to you next time. Bye.